On the first day, this guy sent me to buy lunch. And I came back and I'd bought lunch for like 4 people, and I give them their lunch, and then I give the guy back his change. And I'd recorded exactly how much his change was going to be. So his change is something like, I don't know, £12.74, and I put it on the desk, it's £12.74. He looks at it, he's like, what's that? And I said, it's your change. And he didn't say anything. So just wait, I was like, it's £12.74. And he doesn't say anything, he just slides the money along his desk into the drawer. And then he looks at me. He looked at me like he was going to kill me. And he said, on this desk, we keep the change. Where I grew up is a very poor area, Central Ilford. I lived on a little terrace street called Francis Avenue. Street full of small terraced houses. The trains out from Essex went right through the back garden. Canary Wharf skyscrapers, I think the first one probably went up when I was something like 7 or 8, something like that. And then the latter ones went up maybe when I was getting into sort of 10 or 11. And we could see them go up on the horizon. And you forget it now, obviously, because London's full of skyscrapers. But at the time, those were the tallest buildings in the country. And like, as kids, we thought they were enormous. And you could get the DLR, Docklands Light Railway, is this, for those who don't know, not everyone's from London, it's this set of like kind of toy trains with no driver, and you can sit at the front, and it went through Canary Wharf. And I remember as a kid, you'd take the train through, like sit at the front, pretend to be the driver, and like look up at all these skyscrapers, which at the time, they just seemed enormous. They seemed enormous to us. And as kids, you see those skyscrapers go up on the horizon, it is a big thing you kind of aspire to. I was good at English at school, and I remember my English teacher would say, you have a very mathematical style of writing. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with like rules. My parents would know, like, if you want to get Gary to do something, give him a rule. They said to me, you can have 1 chocolate bar a week. And I would be like collecting 6 chocolate bars under my bed until my mum would steal them one day. Like I was that kind of kid. In some sense, I was a natural economist. Like I wanted to optimize the rules that I was given. It's weird in a way, but I had to have a system and a set of rules for everything.
And when you were like growing up, what was your like understanding or relationship with money and the economy at that point?
I mean, I knew that my parents were hard up, and I think I like really internalized from a young age that I didn't want to take any money from my parents. I wanted to make my own money, so as soon as I turned 12 or 13 or whatever like the legal age is, that's when I started my first paper round. As soon as I turned 16, I tried to get a Sunday job. Once I got to 15, people started taking drugs, and there was a little bit of involvement in that, and I ended up getting expelled from school when I just turned 16 at the beginning of year 11. I got expelled from school for drugs. I was a good student, so everybody kind of thought, and I went to this fancy grammar school. That fancy grammar school was called Ilford County High School. You go to in the hall, they have on the wall the names of the kids that went to Oxford and Cambridge. And you just kind of assume, I'm going to be on that wall, and then suddenly you're expelled from school, and everybody thinks you're going to go to prison, basically. And it was tough. I was young, I just turned 16, you're separated from all of your friends. I remember I woke up the next day, and my parents were both at work. My older brother was at work, my younger sister was at school, and you're just like, well, what am I going to do? Like, you don't have nowhere to go for the first time in your life. You don't have anywhere to go. And I went and I took a shower, and in my parents' old house, you used to you get this rubber hose and stick it on the taps and sit in the bath. I remember sitting in the bath, like holding this little rubber hose and watching the water go down the drain and thinking, that's your life if you don't do nothing. It was really hard to get into a sixth form, obviously, because I had all these great grades, but like I'd been expelled from school, and I couldn't get into any local schools. And I remember I walked into, there was a school near me called Valentine's, which is where a lot of my friends from primary school ended up going to the local comp. Their head teacher was a famous economics teacher, and he'd written my economics textbook. And I walked in randomly in the summer, and I was like, into the office, and I was like, can I come in for sixth form? He was like, what are your grades? And I was like, 8 A stars, 3 A's. He said, did you take economics? And I said, yeah, I took economics. He goes, what did you get? I said, I got A star. He said, what textbook did you study? And then I clocked, he must be this guy. And I said, oh, your textbook, sir. And that was it, he accepted me into the school. I got 4 A's and I got into LSE, which is, for those who don't know, London School of Economics. It's a super fancy, prestigious economics university in central London, where a lot of international, millionaires and billionaires send their kids to study. And I started there when I was 18, doing maths and economics. Suddenly at LSE, everybody knew who I was. And I didn't know it was because of my grades, because my grades weren't like the best, basically. They were good, but they weren't the best. And I said to my mate, Sagamalde, he's a lovely guy, and I said to him, why does everybody know who I am? And he was like, well, it's because of your grades. And this guy, Sagamalde, was #1 in the maths department in first year. So I was like, well, your grades is better than mine. And he said, well, yeah, of course, but nobody expected it from you. Suddenly at LSE you realise, these posh boys think we're dumb. They actually think that we're stupid. And then I think that sort of lit a little bit of a fire, which made me sort of think, well, you know, let's show them that we're not stupid. Yeah, I think that motivated me as well. It's a 3-year course, and first year was quite easy. You get to second year, and everyone suddenly had gone mental, basically. And like, people had become obsessed with investment banking internships, right? They started wearing suits. People would come into university in suits, like, for no reason. And they were applying for like 35 internships at a time. And they started to speak using, they would use these acronyms you've never heard of, CDSs and CDOs and MBSs and MBA and IBD, and you'd be like, what are you going? And you'd ask them, what is the acronym? And they'd be like, I don't know. But this is just like, everyone would just start, and you just be like, what is going on, basically? And so you speak to your mates, like, why has everybody gone mental? Because you're thinking, well, I'm going to get the best grades, I'm going to get the best job. And then my mate was like, well, this is internship year. You're like, okay, what's internship year? And the way you get a job is you get an internship now. You can't get a job unless you get an internship now. And this is a problem, right? Because I don't have my grades yet. And, you know, and I'm hoping I'm going to compete on the back of my grades, but you don't have your grades yet. So you're like, okay, well, how do we get an internship? And what it is you've got to send CV and cover letter. You've got to send 35 CVs and 35 cover letters, right? And, you know, my grades at undergrad were good, but everyone at LSE's undergrad grade, like, A-levels are good. Everyone at Oxford, Cambridge, all their A-levels are good, right? So how do you stand out at that level? It's basically extracurriculars on your CV. So all of these guys from rich families, their families knew this, and they'd been making sure they had this extracurricular stuff. So like, this guy would have been head of the Junior United Nations, or this guy would have like founded a charity that like drives dirt bikes through the Sahara Desert for some reason. Or this guy would have like played the oboe at the Royal Albert Hall, you know. So basically you realise, you come in here and you're like 19 years old, and you realise, all right, I see, these jobs are going to be distributed based on how good we are at clarinet. You realise, like, there's no way I'm going to get these jobs. And then you can't, I would like to say that I realised then that the world was unfair, blah, but the truth is, as 19, I was just like, all right, what's the next plan? Because I think you're a kid in London coming from a poor background. You just kind of expect these doors to be slammed in your face. So I was just like, all right, fine, I'm not going to get an internship. So what are we going to do next?
And what did you do next? What was your plan?
I was in the library one day, and this lanky northern guy with kind of like Beatles haircut, he wandered up to me. I'd never met him before, and he said, are you Gary Stevenson? And I was like, yeah. And he said, I'd never met this guy in my life. He said to me, Citibank hires one trader a year through a card game. It's called the trading game, and if you win it, you can get an internship. And I was like, well, that's good, because I'm terrible at clarinet, so this is probably something that we can use.
Why do they do that?
To be honest, I think it's partially just because it gives them a little bit of a rep on campus, like, oh, aren't City cool and different? They're like hiring somebody for a trading game. But then if you actually go back and look at the traders that City hired through the trading game, a lot of them went on to become extremely successful traders at Citibank. And I think actually, if you're hiring 30 traders based on how good they are at clarinet, it kind of makes sense to hire one guy because he's good at a maths game. You know, trading is not a maths game, but it is a game. And if you're able to come into this game and win it, it probably is a sign that you might be a good trader, you know.
What is the trading game?
It's a betting game, basically. It's kind of a poker-style game. Basically, they had their own special made deck of cards. So there's some low cards and some higher cards. We hand all the cards out. So 5 of us are playing. We all get a card. And there's 3 cards on the middle which get turned over as we play the game. And basically, we bet with one another what the total of the cards are going to be. I knew straight away what the LSE students would do. So if you've studied maths or economics or statistics or something like this, straight away you're going to do this like mathematical calculation in your head, which is to calculate the expected value of the total cards given the card that you have in your hand. This is not complicated maths. Anyone who's studied maths will be able to do this. They'll instinctively do that, and then they'll start betting around what they think the total is going to be, which is a very stupid way to play the game, although it's obvious, because if, you know, you've got a high card and this guy over here has a low card, and you both start quoting based on what your card is, you'll be betting the total's going to be, say, 70. He'll be betting the total's going to be like 50. And I can just buy at 50, sell at 70, buy at 50, sell at 70, again and again and again and again and again. So there were 2 rounds basically. There was a LSE round, which I won very easily. And then there was a final where they had students from like elite universities across the country, Citibank's target universities, whatever, Oxford and Cambridge and this kind of thing. And at the final, everyone had already played the game, so they kind of knew the strategy. And between the first round and the final, I just didn't go to class. I spent 3 weeks like obsessively memorizing this game. So by the time I got to the final, I was like probably the world's like preeminent expert on this game. I had another strategy, which again, perhaps typically of myself, was to be very loud and a bit obnoxious in the game and try and like bully the market basically, bully the price to go where I wanted it to be. And I had an extremely low card in the final. And my plan was to like bully the price up really high and start selling at this high price because I know it can't be that high because I've got this low card. And the cards in the middle turn over and they were quite high. So I just pushed the price up and I was just trading really, really aggressively. The game finishes and everybody turned their cards over. There's 8 cards in the game, right? 5 players, 3 in the middle. I had the lowest card possible. The other 7 cards were the 7 highest possible cards, which is basically statistically impossible. It's like 1 in like 10 million chance or something like this. Like it's impossible happening. And you realise straight away, the game's been rigged against me. And of course I lost enormously because this thing that happened is basically statistically impossible. And I was sort of sitting there in this like, it was in this like high floor in this Citibank skyscraper, just asking myself like, why have they rigged the game against me? And then the guy who ran the games comes to the front and he says, the winner of the game was Gary Stevenson. And he said we wanted to see what he would do if everything turned out against him. We wanted to see someone who would back himself, and he did. So Gary's the winner. So yeah, they rigged the game against me, which I think is a little bit of a metaphor for the world that we live in, I think.
And then you get onto the trading floor.
Yeah.
Can you talk me through like that first moment, that first day?
So it's Canary Wharf, Citibank. The trading floor is only on the 2nd floor. It's not on the top floor. Go in. I remember I was wearing a blue shirt and a yellow tie, a fat yellow tie, which is like a terrible fitting suit jacket from Next, which is the stuff I used to wear to like go work at DFS, the sofa store I used to work. You get taken up these escalators in this massive, massive room. Trading floor is so vast, enormous room. Like you walk in and it seems to like endless, like right, left, forwards. And everyone has these massive walls of screens, 9 screens, 12 screens that kind of go up around them like this. On the first day, this guy sent me to buy lunch. And I came back and I'd bought lunch for like 4 people and I give them their lunch and then I give the guy back his change. And I'd recorded exactly how much his change was going to be. So his change is something like, I don't know, £12.74. And I put it on the desk, it's £12.74. He looks at it. He's like, what's that? And I said, it's your change. And he didn't say anything. So just wait, I was like, it's £12.74. And he doesn't say anything. He just slides the money along his desk into the drawer. And then he looks at me. He looked at me like he was going to kill me. And he said, on this desk, we keep the change. Just like that. And I was like, these guys are mental basically. But then I was like, fine, like, all right. And then I started buying everyone lunch because I was keeping the change, just making loads of money. And then they started kind of like testing me by like, oh, go buy lunch for this guy, go buy lunch for that guy. They'd order like really complicated orders from like different things to see if I could like kind of test me, like as if I'm going to fail to get lunch correctly, right? Part of me didn't like to be treated like that a little bit. But I think I was willing to take whatever I had to take to get what I needed to get, basically. You know, I grew up in a very poor background. That job was going to make me a millionaire. What is weird is, you might think coming from a poor background, I would experience like class prejudice. But the trading floor, of all the places I've ever been, these guys loved me from the start. And I think it's because they have this idea of the Cockney white boy trader. And also, they have this idea that the trading floor is like a super meritocratic place. So when a kid actually turns up from the local area, it makes them feel like, yeah, we are meritocratic. And I think also, like, of all the places that I've been in, this was the only space where rather than being like, poor kids are dumb, they were smart enough to realise, if this guy's managed to get this far, looking like that and speaking like that, he's probably got something about him, basically. What were the people that you met on the trading floor like? I met this guy, he was a very wealthy guy. He went on to become an amazingly profitable trader. And he had his own designated taxi driver who would drive him home every time he got too drunk. And his taxi driver told me one time that every time he gets too drunk, he insists that on the way home, I drop him outside the Bank of England so he can go around the back of the Bank of England and take a piss on the Bank of England on the way home. And I thought he was hero. I work with some maniacs. There's another guy who's called Rupert, who I think I describe as looking like he was unexpectedly dropped off at boarding school at 8 years old and not picked up till he was 21, which I later found out to be not far from the truth. This guy was just I think his dad was in the army, absolute like British blue blood, like everything has to be straight, everything has to be completely narrow, nobody can cross the line, very like rigid, angry. He told me once, he said to me, I've got a problem, which is every time I meet someone, I need to know straight away whether they're better than me or whether they're worse than me. And if they're better than me, I hate them. I hate them because they're better than me. But if they're worse than me, I despise them. I think that's why he liked hanging out with me. Because we were from such radically different class backgrounds, I think he felt that he didn't have to compare himself to me. Because people like me just don't register. Just don't register on the scale, basically. And he would take me out like his little Cockney sidekick in Clapham. He got me really drunk one time. And I got in trouble because I come in the next day, I threw up. I had to go to the bathroom, threw up, got sent home. And the next day I come in really early and the boss Caleb said to this guy Rupert, Gary said it was your fault that you got that drunk. And there was an empty seat next to me and he was one seat there. And I just thought, don't look at him because he'll be going mental. Just gently at first, I heard him like growling, slightly growling, like this. And I just thought, don't look at him. He starts growling like louder and louder and louder. And I was just really trying not to look at him until he was growling like so loudly. I thought like I better look at him. I heard this bang and he kicked. We had these doors, like the computer like towers behind the doors. He kicked the doors and they go bang against the brackets. And I looked around at him. He was turned around to me and he was gnashing his teeth like that, like a dog or like a wolf at me, like growling and like barking at me in front of everyone for like 20 seconds. This is the room full of millionaires, right? Like people get paid £1 million a year to do this. I don't want to point fingers too much at these guys as individuals because they're not all bad guys. They're real people at the end of the day. I think for me, it's a crazy space, and I think it's the space that makes the people go crazy, in my mind.
You land a full-time job with Citibank. What are you earning in the first few years of your career?
My first big bonus was when I was in the beginning of 2010 when I just turned 23. And that was just under £400,000. And that was so much more than I had been expecting. I knew traders made a lot of money, but I think people from my background, when they think of a lot of money, they think of like 100 grand. They think, oh my God, 100 grand. 100 grand is a lot of money. And that's what I thought these guys were making. And in fact, that had been my aim, to make 100 grand. And I'd ask my boss, what do I need to do to make 100 grand? And he told me, make $10 million for Citibank. So I made $12 million and I got paid this 400 grand. And I think it was that bonus when I was 23 that kind of blew my mind. And
what was the most amount of money that you lost?
Well, I lost $8 million in a week when I was in 2010, when I was still 23. I lost $8 million in a week. And that was mad because I graduated in 2008. So a lot of my mates couldn't get jobs. Obviously that was the financial crisis, right? And I was like halfway through this week by that point and I'd already lost like $5 million in 3 days. And all my mates around just like playing Pro Evolution. And you're just thinking like, I've lost $5 million. Like, how much more can I lose before I lose my job? It really dehumanizes you. It's the stress and the pressure of it. And it really separated me from my friends and my family. You can't turn around and tell them I lost $5 million this week. You know, they're not gonna understand. And also like, you don't wanna be a you know what I mean? But at the same time, you can't think about nothing else. You can't think about nothing else. And then I got called into a meeting early 2011 with one of the Citibank's top economists. And he went through the financial situation of a lot of the world's governments. So I don't know if you remember, in 2011, there was this big crisis with the governments of Italy, Spain, Portugal, Greece, Ireland. This is before that kicked off. And it was like all of these governments going massively into debt. Every year they're spending more than they can make. They're having to sell off their assets. Their debts are exploding, you know, including the governments of the UK, the US, Japan. These are the biggest governments in the world, you know. And I come out of that meeting and I was like, how can it be my friends are losing their houses and going into debt? Their families are doing that. The world's governments are losing their assets and going into debt. Like, where are the assets going? Who is the debt to? Like, it's not possible, right? We can't all go into debt. Somebody has to go on the other side of that. We can't all lose our assets. Somebody has to be getting the assets. And I was sitting there. I used to have to take the sandwiches to that meeting. So I had all these sandwiches around me, sitting on the desk, come at this meeting where you realise, like, all of the governments in the world are totally basically. And you look around and you're surrounded by these like fat millionaires in pink shirts, and you realise like, it's us, isn't it? We are the guys who are accumulating, like, you know, I myself was on the verge of becoming a millionaire at that point, you know what I mean? And you realise this is it, like we are accumulating the assets from the middle class, from the government, and then you realise it's not going to get better. Because if the middle class families can't afford to pay the bills when they own their own house, well, their kids definitely won't when they don't own their own houses. If governments can't run a balanced budget when they're not massively in debt, well, they definitely can't when they are massively in debt. And what I saw in that moment was that it's going to spiral. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. That wealth would continue to be sucked out of the middle class and towards the rich. And I realised straight away that there would never be an economic recovery. And I put this massive bet on. I was an interest rates trader, so my specific bet was the interest rates would stay zero for like 3 years. Everybody thought interest rates were going to come up really quickly. And that bet was super successful, basically. And I made $35 million for the bank, and I got paid millions of dollars myself, basically on the back of this bet that the global economy would collapse and the society would collapse. Suddenly, I was a multi-millionaire, surrounded by multi-millionaires, betting the economy was going to collapse. And I just thought, what the f*** am I doing here? Why am I here? I don't need any more money. But at the same time, I'd worked so hard to get to that space, you know what I mean? And I was the best trader in the world at that point. And you're getting paid millions of dollars a year. You don't want to walk away from it. But I think that is the point in my career and in my life where this voice starts to come in that says, is it right to be doing this? I don't think it's wrong for poor people to do what they have to do to make money, as long as you're not directly hurting no one. I think rich people should be giving more. I think rich people should be doing more. And at that stage of my life, I wasn't a poor person anymore, I was a rich person. And I think I knew in my heart I had to be doing more as well.
And how did you get out of the trading game, the trading world?
I got called in to meet with my boss. The thing is, I hated that boss. I really hated him. But I had to laugh at his jokes for 6 months. And then suddenly I get this bonus, I don't have to laugh at the guy's jokes no more. And I was just like ripping the piss out of this guy every day. And we started to like argue a lot, and he called me into his office and he was shouting at me, screaming at me. And then I just thought, what the f*** am I doing? What am I doing? And I just looked up to my boss and said, I need to quit. And my boss was like, because at that time I was Citibank's top trader in the world, right? And then senior management went mental, and eventually they decided, okay, don't quit, we're gonna move to Tokyo. And I thought at the time that was a bad idea, but I said to him, I don't think that's a good idea. And he said to me, you don't understand, you have to go. And I was like, well, if you're gonna be about it, then I'll go and take another bonus then, which I did. And I moved to Tokyo. And that begins the final fight, you could say, between me and Citibank, me leaving the bank.
What was life like after you left?
I went through a difficult couple of years leaving. It wasn't easy to leave, but it was nice that happened in Tokyo. I basically had 2 years of like cycling around Tokyo, eating ramen in little like corner ramen bars, thinking about what it means to be walking away from a $2 million a year job. It was weird, you know, but I decided like I wanted to do something about society collapsing. Maybe I'm a fucking idiot, but that's what I decided to do, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
What's your motivation for the work you do now? I mean, is it money?
I don't want society to collapse. Funny people ask me this, you know. I made millions of pounds betting that the average British family will collapse into poverty. Desperate poverty. I'm talking about Charles Dickens, Oliver Twist. That is the future of this country if we don't deal with growing inequality. That is what I see.
What are the biggest problems that we face in this country?
It's wealth inequality. It's wealth inequality. Listen, if you allow wealth to flow at an unbelievably rapid rate out of your middle class, away from ordinary working families, away from the government, towards the super rich, then living standards will collapse. Housing will become unaffordable. Distribution matters. If we're playing chess and you take all of my pieces one at a time, I'm going to lose that chess game. That is what I see when I see the economy. We've seen government debt explode. We've seen living standards collapse for ordinary working people. At the same time, the biggest and fastest ever increase in the wealth of millionaires and billionaires. And nobody's connecting these two things. The reality is, we've created a world which tells you need to be rich to be happy, you need to be rich to be of value, and yet which simultaneously makes it almost impossible for them to get rich. Listen, don't buy the hype on it, you know. Yeah, work hard to take care of your family and be proud of yourself. Be proud of the things that you achieve, because they're selling you a dream that they never gave you a chance to get in. And if you buy that dream, you're going to be and unhappy. And I've got friends that work really, really hard and struggle to pay the bills. And I want those people to be proud, because that was my dad and my mum. Yeah, I want people to be proud of the work that they do and realize that these stars they're putting in your eyes are for them and not you.
We've got offices in Hong Kong, in Mauritius, in Denver, Colorado. This calendar year, we'll have sold over $500 million worth of product, which is, again, crazy.